working so hard, producing your show, sweating it out, and you don't even cut into your sleep and being very proud you only have 4 hours because you were up editing. Now, how do you convert your labor, your sweat, and the genius that you put into that show into something valuable? We're going to talk about everything on monetization. Why do you have a show? It's to be perhaps B2B relationship. You are really wanting to that larger organization connect with you, promoting your services and product. Or you're actually wanting to talk directly to your clients, the people that need to walk into your clinic or buy the wearable that you created. Now, or perhaps you have a platform. All you want is interview all the fun things and the difficult conversations, but you have a following. But perhaps it's a little small, but they're engaging. How do you then get the sponsors with the right message, supporting all the hard work from the back end and the front work to getting the amazing speakers and show off their work? All right, so John, Zach, welcome to today's episode. And then what are some of your experiences about monetizing the show and really showing values with all the hard work that we're all putting in as healthcare creatives?
So I'll jump in. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Jeff.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Zach.
I'll jump in real quick. So I had a very important lesson given to me one time, and I know all three of us met at PodFest. I know we've talked about that in the past, and I was at PodFest, which is an incredible annual event that's held in Orlando every year, and that's how the three of us became friends and brought this together. And I remember running into somebody, and I was struggling because I need to monetize my show, and I said, I don't have a lot of downloads. And this person gave me the best advice. He goes, you don't need a lot of downloads. You need the right downloads. And he asked me, who's your avatar? And I'm like, what? Who? And so what I had learned, an important lesson, is that I need to engage with my listeners so I know who they are, so that when I get in front of a big potential sponsor, I can really speak to the demographics versus a general audience, which a lot of sponsors in today's time with so many competitors really want a niche. So if you have the ability to share data from engaging with your listeners, then that will put you one step further in securing that big sponsorship.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The riches are in niches. And I'll just give you a personal anecdote. Years ago, I did a podcast up until the pandemic. I did it for about 10 years. It was called Tailgate Radio, and I traveled all over the country and abroad. And we just spent time in the parking lots of sporting events and interviewing people. And we had a camera there. We did video and audio. But that was a concept that was really foreign when we first started. So I went to Houston, Texas, the home of Igloo coolers. And it's like, okay, if we're going to do this sporting event, coolers are a natural. This was before Yetis were around and all that stuff. But I got some great advice from the guy at Igloo. He's like, look, we're not going to give you any money right now, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you 500 coolers to give away at different
Awesome.
Events. If you will get the actual spontaneous reaction to people looking at the cooler, and this was a very specialized cooler. When you lifted the hood of the cooler or lifted the lid, it would play the fight song of the university. So it's really cool, and it had the university logo on it. We gave them some great feedback, and the next time, and I did not have a lot of listeners at the time, they turned around and cut me a check for $25,000, and they said, go do this everywhere. We love this.
You're having fun and making money at the same time.
And that's the whole key. Have a blast doing this. And be as creative as you can think, because companies are looking for that organic, we called it the organic touch point, where you can actually use that product or service where you are at that time and get feedback from the people that you're trying to work with, and they will find tremendous value. We didn't even think that way when we started, and we basically turned that podcast into a market research project, and companies came to us from far and wide because they saw that we were in the parking lot where it mattered, and you could put this, and it created brand loyalty. It did all these things. So be super creative. You don't have to have a lot of listeners when you start to find that niche that is going to work for you and your brand.
Perfectly said. Combining both what Zach and John was talking about, you really have to be very clear on who you're talking to. You can start by creating the avatar of your perfect person, and then continuously do engagement with your audience and figure out where the spectrum they are. Because from a sponsor level, as we are having our amazing annual event, and the first one in Orlando with PodFest, the 10-year anniversary in January 2024 for Healthcare Amplified Summit. For all of us who are creative in the field, we are getting some of the bigger sponsors. How do we do that? Guess what? That sponsor deck is collectively of our demographics of all of us influencers, all the speakers, and the people who truly contribute to this event. And because they want to know what's the education level of your listeners, female or male, because they want to be majority female, since the female are more likely to be the buying decision makers. And they wanted to also look into geographic locations. And if you don't have all that, it's hard for someone who's spending money to it. And also, as a keynote speaker, I don't go into an event to speak unless I know who they are bringing from audience perspective. So I know it's worth my time to be there to speak to the people that's the right people, right? That right crowd. That's exactly what John is saying. If you're creating event, you having this podcast or doing some type of sponsor activity that's directly to their end buyers, of course they want to partner up with you. And sometimes, yes, it's hard when you don't have a large following. That's why we also put a collective together with Healthcare Amplified to be able to bring some of the larger sponsors in your behalf. Think about it. If we have 10 shows hosts and believe in that big message from this, let's say Johnson Johnson, and then of course they will see, wow, 10 shows additively, all these downloads, that is much more powerful than just one show pitching for someone. John, where's your thinking on that?
Yeah, you really brought up some great points, and specifically for the Healthcare Amplified, I think, at least in my experience, people that are in the healthcare industry that are content creators are a little bit of an outlier. And so this is going to create this event, this summit that we're doing is going to create an environment where like-minded people that work in the healthcare and in the wellness areas are going to be able to come together. And the thing I love about the sponsors is that we have a large gamut of sponsor opportunities, because we are speaking directly to healthcare providers, but we're also speaking to content creators, so that the companies, the microphone companies and the recording companies, as well as those legacy companies like you mentioned, Johnson & Johnson and other hospital entities and recruiting entities in the healthcare space, are all going to come together in this truly, I know this name gets, or this term gets used a lot, unique. This is really unique. And I think as we continue to grow this, and as you pointed out, Sabrina, the fact that each attendee of this event has their own community that they're able to amplify, that's no pun intended, their message to their particular audience, that has the potential to grow exponentially right after the event or during the event even. So that's what I'm super excited about with the Healthcare Amplified Summit, is that we're bringing together this really unique community that has the potential to literally change the world and how we share information about healthcare.
Yeah, I've got it. I got to plug my favorite word, and that's friendworking. I know Sabrina likes that word a lot. So I've never seen a better opportunity to friend work. And let me give a real example for this, so I can really illustrate and underscore what you're saying there, John. I had a podcast about raising your parents and taking care of your parents in the caregiver space. And when I was trying to think of how to monetize it, you think of all the big names like, Depends, adult undergarments, or perhaps, devices that will help somebody, live independently. But the more I started thinking about it, I'm like, you know what? My audience, my avatar is the caregiver. I really need to think about going to a sponsor who's going to go to the caregiver space. But then I'm like, I don't know anybody there. I went to a caregiver conference and I friend worked. In other words, I'm not really asking for somebody for something. They're not asking something from me, but we're just meeting each other. And all of a sudden, I have a handful of people I can call and say, hey, have you worked with a caregiver app? People who develop it. I got in touch with the actual developer of the caregiver app, and we were able to have a great conversation. We both were excited about what we were doing, and that increased my chance of getting a better sponsorship than maybe a large commercialized retail item that probably will look at me like, oh, you're too small for us. So Friendworking has extreme benefits that I love. It's just the best way to really use, is the best use of your time, your limited busy time that you have.
Exactly. So well said. And then we know we actually run a Friendworking brainstorming session every monthly for our collective members. That's every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So please join us. We would love to learn more about your show and your amazing work for helping us to get to a better place, and then vice versa. We're all about creating win-win situation here. As we wrap up in the next couple minutes, one thing that we did not mention to you is we actually help our collective member to turn their podcast show into continuing education credit. And it's so easy that it's not the traditional process of going to every single association. And within a couple of days, your show, from all the things you produced in the past and in the future, can be monetized. Think about that. All right, so as we wrap up for today's episode, we would love to hear from John and Zach about what are the final takeaway.
So I feel like, you could spend all the day and time you want looking up experts and trying to connect with them on LinkedIn. But I have found, especially in my later years as I've gotten wiser, that I'd rather take 3 days and spend time in person and build relationships and trust. That goes a lot further than all the work I've been trying to do, just trying to connect people online. And so I'm excited about the collective. I hope you will be too. It's going to be an incredible opportunity to work smarter, not harder, to friend work, and to really amplify your voice.
Yeah, and I'll dovetail on that with the fact that podcasting celebrated its 20th anniversary of being a thing this week. And when you think about that in perspective, it is still in its infancy. And despite what you've heard, that podcasting is saturated, everybody's got there's always these memes, everyone has a podcast. That is not true. And no one has your experience, your life experience, your work experience. So you have a unique perspective that is going to reach someone, touch someone, relate to someone. And I would encourage you that if you're not currently creating content or just thinking about it, as to Zach's point, come to Healthcare Amplify this year, stay for PodFest, and engage yourself, immerse yourself in being around these creative professionals and really investing in yourself. There's no better investment than you can do.
Thank you so much, you two, and thanks everyone for listening in. Yes, no one else have your voice, so use your voice, leveraging that voice for the betterment of healthcare, and you can shape it in the way that you want it to, and not just be constricted by what's existing. So until next week, bye guys.
See you in Orlando.
Come join us on Thursday, January 25th in Orlando for the first ever Healthcare Amplified Summit as part of the 10th anniversary of the PodFest Multimedia Expo. You'll hear from amazing healthcare content creators from around the globe, engage in multiple networking, or as we call them, friendworking events, and collaborate with like-minded healthcare content creators. Experience this and a whole lot more. To register, go to our website at healthcareamplified.org, and we'll see you in Orlando.